Welcome to Decision Analyst Insider Series webinar on Ignition Liftoff, Accelerating New Product Development. My name is Christy Allen. I'm the Marketing Director at Decision Analyst and the moderator today. Before I introduce our presenters, I have a few notes for everyone. There is a copy of today's presentation in the Handouts section available for everyone to download, along with some relevant white papers and case studies. Also, please feel free to ask any questions by typing in the chat box. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. If we don't answer your question during the webinar, someone will respond to your question within a day or two. Today's presenters are Jerry Thomas, President and CEO. Jerry has assisted many clients with their new product research and new product development projects throughout his career. And also Clay Detloff, Senior Vice President of Insights and Innovation. He specializes in applying qualitative research and ideation techniques to help clients in their new product development efforts. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Jerry.
Welcome to today's webinar. This is Jerry, and Clay will be joining me as we go through the webinar today. So welcome, and hope that you will find this interesting and useful. We will use the term new products a lot today as we go through the webinar. And when we say new products, we are also using that as shorthand for new services or for new products that combine services. For example, when you think about a restaurant, it's a combination of products and services. So when we use the term new products, we're using that as shorthand for all of the different types of new products and services that one might develop. There are several really valuable research techniques to help set up or guide new product development. One is market segmentation. We're not going to talk about that today, but I just want you to keep that in mind because a really good market segmentation identifies different pockets or different buckets of opportunity that you can use to focus the new product development process. The other extremely valuable research technique is qualitative research. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. The other technique is ideation and generating ideas. And then once those ideas are created, how do we go about evaluating those? I'm going to talk some about toothpicks as a new product category just so that we have a reference point, but we'll also bring in some other new product categories as we go. The beginning of the new product development process begins with some basic decisions, and these are human judgments. You cannot create new products in a vacuum. You have to choose some starting points, and then the process will begin to work. You have to choose a product category and or a target market or a problem or a need or a wish or an aspiration. Or perhaps all four of these elements must come together. But these are purely judgment decisions. And once you've made those decisions, then the new product development process can begin. You might remember a few years ago, the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, popularized the term unknown unknowns. And he talked about known knowns and known unknowns and the dreaded unknown unknowns. And it's those unknown unknowns that are often the keys to new product development and new product success, because we don't know what we don't know. And qualitative research is the way that we discover those unknown unknowns. Clay, would you take us through the qualitative section?
Be glad to, Jerry. Thank you. As Jerry mentioned, the first step is really qualitative research, and it's designed to really dig down and uncover all those relevant issues that are out there to understand those hidden things that people they like, that they don't like, those white spaces that exist out there. It lets you know what's going on in the mind of the consumer, really, in order to really kind of bring meaningful new products and new concepts to life, and to help identify those places that the consumer wants you to go and desires you to go. There's a lot of different methodologies out there that we use. And the thing is, each of these methodologies has different positives and negatives. There's strengths of doing a focus group. There's weaknesses of doing a focus group. Same thing with ethnographies or any of the platforms and methodologies that you can use. One of the things that we've found is that kind of the gold standard as we think about these new product development ideas is the in-depth interview. And the great thing about in-depth interviews is they let you kind of get away from groupthink. They let you talk about what people want and what's really important to people, and kind of gives them some anonymity, if you will, in a sense that they can share in a one-on-one situation without social pressures. There are some simple questions that might be used, and we see these on the top of the screen. What are your earliest memories of taking care of your teeth, as we're thinking about this toothpick example, for example. But, basically we really want to understand and get the participants to talk about their experiences, their perceptions, their emotions, and their frustrations. And the beauty of a one-on-one, again, is that the one-on-one environment lets them go in areas that is important to them, versus more of a structured format that you might find in a group or a large group exercise. A great example of this is years ago we were doing some research in Asia on food and beverages. And we had done some groups talking to younger people about what they liked about different food and beverages. And they were talking about kind of the start of their beverage and usage was purchased beverage usage was drinking these yellow and green and red beverages. And when we talked to them in a group situation, they talked about how each of these different variations had a slightly different taste, if you will. There were different fruit variations as they went through. When we got them into a one-on-one situation, what we really found was something very interesting, is that to a T, every girl talked about drinking the red soda or the red drink, and every boy talked about drinking the green and the yellow. And it boiled down to the reason was the girls, as a young age, weren't allowed to wear makeup and lipstick, and the red made them look like they were wearing lipstick. To a T, the boys weren't going to touch the stuff because it made them look like they were wearing lipstick. And so this one-on-one kind of endeavor versus a group endeavor really enabled us to kind of get down deep into what's important to these people and the true decision-making processes that they had. If you think about it, there's a lot of different variations in a new product of just, we have a new variety of fruit flavor versus, maybe there's opportunities with lipsticks or makeups or things like that that can or can't apply to different people. In addition to the depth interviews and just the straight line of questioning, sometimes that straight line of questioning just doesn't give you all the information you need. So we usually use some kinds of different projective techniques kind of to help peel the onion a little bit more. Going back to our toothpick example, we might ask participants to draw a picture of people using toothpicks, or tell a story about how they learned to use toothpicks. There's lots of different projective methodologies out there, from the use of images to role playing to, bubble diagrams on how people would talk. Importantly, though, projective techniques provide windows into these non-conscious brain and into really deeper underlying motives and emotions. One of the funner methods, goes back to the days of the ink blots. And importantly, in a projective technique like this, it's not only what they see, but the why and the story behind it. As you see this example, do consumers see a goat? Maybe they see a tooth or a cavity, or an arrowhead, And again, it's important to understand what they see, but the real learning, the magic, if you will, happens to understand the why and the stories behind it.
And these ink blots, Clay, as I'm sure you're going to mention, We already know from other studies or standardized responses how people typically respond to this ink blot. So when we talk about toothpicks or new cars in relation to this ink blot, it's the delta, the differential, that's cluing us as to what's going on below the surface.
Great point, Jerry. Thank you. And kind of along that same line, we have an imagery. We use imagery a lot, and we actually have a library of images that we use. And again, we've used these over the years and have some kind of historical understanding of what comes out in each of these. But we can also add images, and frequently do add images for a specific brand or a category that we may not have, in our library as needed. At the end of the day, though, we really want to make sure we cover all the issues and from every variety and from every angle, if you will, in order to help this new product development process. So as we think about different projective techniques, we'll be bringing in, maybe it's imagery, maybe it's role-playing, whatever's needed and whatever's important. One time we did a study when we were talking to respondents in just a direct line of questioning. We were talking to them about this category, and they found that this product was very helpful. And to a T, everybody talked about how helpful the product was and how they liked using it because it helped them fill a need. When we brought in some imagery, one of the images that they chose, a majority of the respondents chose, was an image of a crumbling building that was just collapsing on itself. And from that knowledge, what we really understood was that when they were using this product, yeah, it was helpful, but it was in a time of really deep despair for them. I mean, they were kind of at the bottom of the barrel, if you will, when they were bringing this product to life. So it wasn't just, a nice help. It was a very needed and personally relevant, helpful item.
So once the qualitative research is done, then begins the process of analyzing that data, but from a slightly different perspective than we would analyze normal qualitative data. We're really, again, trying to find those starting points to help stimulate and guide the ideation. And it really helps if you can pretend you just landed on planet Earth from a galaxy far, far away, and you're seeing everything through the fresh, new eyes of a 3-year-old child. And so looking at qualitative data and qualitative feedback, it's how do you really, really listen and really understand at a deeper level. For example, think about love. When people talk to you about love, they don't say, I went out and got myself in love. No, they say, I fell in love, or I'm falling in love. Well, why do we use the metaphor of falling to talk about love? Well, it tells us a number of things about love. We've all heard people say this to us, and we never think about it. But it says that love is sudden. It says love is dangerous. You may be injured when you fall. It says love is an accident. It says that love is uncontrollable. So the simple use of the falling metaphor actually reveals some very deep things that our culture feels and defines about love. In the same way, we use the metaphor of water to talk about money. Well, what the heck does that mean? Why do we talk about cash flow and a company going down the drain? We use all of these metaphors of water when we're talking about money. Well, that tells us that money is moving. It tells us that money evaporates. It tells us that money is essential to life. So there's some deep things being revealed about money by this association with water. So what we're trying to do in the analysis is to see what others see, but understand what others do not understand, to understand at a deeper level. So Clay, I'm going to turn it back to you here to talk a little bit more about the use of qualitative research and starting points and how that leads to ideation.
Perfect, thanks. And again, as Jerry mentioned, qualitative research and analysis really identifies those problems, the wishes, and just those unknown unknowns, if you will, that serve as a starting point and guidelines for ideation. I like to think of these ideas, and you can see some of the ideas that came up from toothpicks in the example on the chart. But these are really kind of bumpers, or they're guardrails. They're ways to focus your ideation session that can help you to, rather than just being blue sky, open-ended, it can give you some focus to make sure that you are getting the results that you want. Because you have to remember, the point of this from a corporate standpoint is to develop some new products that are, worthwhile in taking to market. We've got these bumpers, these guardrails, and we kind of have an idea of what we want to do. Now we're really ready to start generating ideas that can solve or address the problems and opportunities we identified. As we think about these new products and new ideas, they can be very specific. We have done work where we have tried to understand the needs, if you will, of first-time mothers, to understand all the possible ideas, the services, the products that would be relevant to them. And we've had our ideation be very open-ended in that sense. On the other side, we've worked with clients that have developed, internally a specific product or idea, and they needed to kind of figure out how to bring it to life and how to make it work. So these bumpers or guardrails are really important as you think about kind of how to focus your ideation. As we think about ideation, we like to talk about it in terms of being idea-centric. And there's a lot of different types of creativity. You can have musical creativity, mathematical creativity. There's artistic creativity. But what we're really wanting for people is this idea of idea-centric creativity, if you will. And it's creativity that is used to generate ideas to solve problems. We've tested over 200,000 people, just ordinary, everyday people, for having this idea-centric creativity. And what we found is that probably 2 to 4% of the population actually qualifies in this assessment of being, having idea-centric creativity. Interestingly enough, we find that probably the majority of people think they do have idea-centric creativity. So, we've had people who want to take the test just to see if they make it or if they don't make it, if you will. Interestingly, these people are really, again, from everyday walks of life. They are lawyers, we have doctors, we have everyday students and housewives. But they all have a creative tilt to them. And interestingly, they use this ideation as a way to kind of express their creativity, and they really enjoy doing it. Another important piece about this group of people is they are willing to work well together. They like to play in the sandbox together versus kind of being the person of, it's my idea or the highway. They collaborate and they build upon each other's idea. And really building upon each other's ideas is one of the powers and the strengths of ideation and brainstorming. That's where really great, good ideas can become great, is through this ideation and collaboration. As you can see, I love the comment on this slide that the way to get good ideas is to get lots of ideas and throw the bad ones away. And that's attributed to Linus Pauling, and he's won 2 Nobel Prizes, and he's one of the greatest scientists during the 20th century. But it is truly about getting a lot of ideas, and the ideation process is expanding, exploring, coming up with multiple ideas, and then kind of winnowing them down to those choice few that you can then move ahead with. As we talk about this, 2 elements really have to come together to produce useful and original new product ideas. The participants have to be creative, and we talked a little bit about that. And they also usually need to have some kind of relevant experience or knowledge of the category. It's important that they be people who have some kind of interest in what we're going to be talking about. Now, One of the things is you don't have to say necessarily, oh, I want the whole group to be my heavy users or my core users. It's good to include those. It's good to include, loyalists, early adopters, and things like that. But you don't need to just concentrate only on that group, because what we found is kind of when you're thinking about creativity, the wider the net that you cast, the bigger and the more creative ideas you get. It's kind of, if you think only of your true brand fanatics, your loyalists, and only use them, you're going to have a very narrow window of new ideas. But the more, different types of people you bring into the picture, the more different types of responses you're going to be able to get. We're really, again, one of the things to remember with these people is, and from this study as a whole, we're not just trying to brainstorm just to come up with ideas that are out in the sky. We're really trying to focus on ideas that are going to help our clients with their new products and their new product development.
Clay, in addition to using end users or consumers for ideation and new product development, can you also use internal groups like engineers and R&D staff and marketing staff inside of a company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do. We like to bring in people from all different aspects and all different areas into a company and to work with them. I think one of the things that we found is that when we do this, it's really good to make sure that we include all of those people to get varying ideas. A lot of times when we do these sessions, we will kind of do some training with them prior, just to kind of help them to get those creative juices flowing, kind of teach them some techniques that are helpful in ideation and brainstorming. There's two types of ideation sessions that we typically do. The first is in person, and the in-person ones are kind of the fun ones, if you will. It's a session. Typically, we have about 8 to 10 people in it. They are all-day sessions. Sometimes we'll have multi-day sessions. One of the things that's really important is we don't put them kind of in a sterile, what would be considered a sterile focus group room. Oftentimes when we do the work, there are no tables, there's no chairs in the room. But we try to have areas, ideas, and places that will kind of promote and help that creativity process. One thing we are really trying to do is to make sure that we have 2 facilitators. It just keeps the energy going, and it helps as we do breakouts. One of the things we like to do in these types of sessions is we'll do both combinations of individual exercises as well as breakout exercises to bring small groups together. Also, when we think about these ideation sessions, we try to make sure that we use kind of activities and exercises that bring in both the left brain and the right brain. Some people are left brain thinkers and some are right brain thinkers. So the activities and the exercises we do, we make sure that we kind of are able to include that to get the best of everybody who are in the sessions. Now I'm just going to kind of show you a couple of photos of some of these sessions. You can see these people are just kind of working on their own on boards around the room. Again, you can kind of see that if you look on the floor, there's some pillows there. There's just a few toys and scattered items as they're working around. Again, here they're on the floor. They've got their activities. And again, it's just a fun time. And it's a mix of activities that we do. We have them stand, we have them move around, but it's all designed to help those creative processes and to help those creative juices as we have these sessions. The other type of session that we do frequently is an online ideation session, and probably a majority of our sessions are online in nature. These are typically a little bit bigger. There are about 20 to 50 participants that participate in these, and they last several days. We do have a facilitator that administers these sessions also. And we've developed a methodology and exercises that work well online as well as in person. The thing that's really nice about the online session is it gives people a chance to kind of come in at their own convenience a lot of times, so they can think about issues and activities and ideas, let them noodle on it, sometimes let them sleep over it, and then come in with those ideas. And again, whether it's the online session or an in-person session, we really try to make sure that there's a process of brainstorming and then building upon each other's ideas to really kind of bring out the best of the best, if you will.
So now we have generated, in a typical creativity session or ideation session, whether it be online or in person, typically creates 500 to 600 ideas or idea fragments toward a goal or a target that we have set as a guideline or an objective. So we have lots and lots of ideas. What we don't have are finished new product concepts. So think of these hundreds and hundreds of ideas as the raw material from which we are going to mine new product concepts. And we do this with a team approach. We would have the qualitative expert, the moderator of the qualitative, those who led the ideation sessions. We would bring in an artist or a designer. We may add a marketing person to the mix. But we want to create a multidisciplinary team to mine new product concepts out of all the raw material created by the ideation. And typically, this team will create anywhere from 20 to 30, sometimes more, preliminary new product concepts. And at this stage, these are just descriptive. They're textual. There's no pictures or brand names or things of that nature, but just preliminary new product concepts. But they are integrated ideas. So we have 25 to 30 preliminary concepts. The next step is to review those concepts with the client. And at this stage, we're interested in technical feasibility. Can we produce these products? Do they fit in? Do we know how to market these products? Can we market them? Do they fit our distribution system? Can we manufacture the product at a cost to make it economically viable? So some real fundamental questions.
Jerry, that's a great point. One time we were doing an ideation project with a retailer, and going into that client review session, there were probably 4 concepts that had kind of risen to the top. And the consumers liked a lot more than the other ones that were kind of developed. And we went into this client review session, and there was one that particularly most of that team liked. They were like, this is really great. This will be just wonderful. It'll wow everybody. And importantly though, we had operations in there at that same time. And literally operations came in and said, okay, this is a great concept, but if we go with this, we're going to have to revamp the checkout stands and process at every store to make it work. And all of a sudden, it was just a great insight of, oh, okay, we're not going that direction. And so these client reviews are fantastic methodology to make sure it is feasible within your organization.
That's a great point, Clay. To have successful new product development, it really is a collaboration, a cooperation between the outside resources and internal experts and internal knowledge. It's really teamwork that produces great new products. So we started out with 20, 30 preliminary concepts. Now with the client review, we've reduced that down to perhaps 10 to 15 concepts. And now those concepts come back and we start improving them. We begin to add visual imagery. We may add a working brand name. We may go ahead and flesh out those concepts and make them more complete and more integrated.
Jerry, I think one thing that's important that we've had conversations before, is there's a big difference between ideas and concepts. And that ideas are just kind of maybe snippets or they're pieces of things that are very cool, but a concept is really bringing these ideas into something that can be moved forward as a product. And I think that's an important distinction to make as people think about, ideation versus concepts.
Good point, Clay. Thank you. So once we have these close to final, say 10 to 15 concepts, we do a small scale qualitative review, usually 12 to 15 depth interviews, and we're looking to see if these concepts or the expression of the concepts really communicates the core ideas of the concept. Are people understanding what we're trying to say? Is there any really important information that we somehow overlooked and forgot? And then how does the visual imagery fit and reinforce the concept? Do we need to change the visual imagery? Do we need to change the working brand name? Do all of these elements work together synergistically? So once we've gone through this little small scale qualitative review of the finished or near final concepts, we make the final tweaks, and now we're ready for the final evaluation. And this is the throwing the bad ideas away part of the process. So here's what a new product concept might look like on the right side of the screen, or the right 2/3 of the screen. It typically has a headline, illustration. Here's a picture of our great new toothpick, and some text that describes all of its advantages. And of course, this is simply made up for purposes of illustration, and that's the form in which we typically would test new products. One comment here I think that I want to make, it's really important. Every company develops and presents their new product concepts differently. So, and that's okay, but it does call into question the value of all the normative data that everyone claims to have, because these concepts are quite different from company to company. So for your company, it's really important to establish new product concept standards so that every concept looks the same degree of finish, covers the same topics, so that at least your concept scores over time will become valuable in helping you understand how good your new product ideas are. Typically, if we have, when we're evaluating the concepts, if we have a lot of concepts, and by that I mean 10 or 15 or 20, the first step will be concept screening. And in concept screening, we use a dependent test. That is, each person sees a large number of concepts, generally 10 to 12, sometimes a few more. We ask very simple questions about purchase interest, about perceived competition, expected frequency of purchase, if that's a relevant issue, and then pricing acceptance or pricing questions. And based on these simple measures, we can come up with a volumetric approximation that allow us to index all of the concepts so that we know that concept A represents 3 times as much market potential as concept B, and so on. Now, we still don't know what the sales volume potential is. We just know that one product concept is much better than another one. But with this type of concept screening, we can rank all of the new product ideas. And the goal is to try to get down to 3 or 4 of our very best ideas. These 3 or 4 best ideas then go into a final concept test. The final concept test is monadic. Sample size usually range from 200 to 300, but if it's a really big, important new product, we may go to 500 or even 1,000 to improve the accuracy. And here we're going to ask a bunch of questions. This is a full-blown monadic concept test, including all the questions we covered in the screening, but adding another 40 or 50 questions, and I've got some of the more important shown here on the screen. And the concept test is really important in helping us understand the product, understand how maybe to improve it, and giving us a sense of what the market potential might be. A companion step or a next step is actual product testing. So if we have a concept for a new toothpick, we would put that in 200 or 300 homes and allow people to use that product for 2 weeks or a month, and then we would have them evaluate it. And again, it would be a full-blown monadic in-home usage test or IHUT to evaluate how likely it is that people are going to accept and use this product long-term. So there are a lot of different ways to test products depending on the type of product. If we were evaluating a new pickup truck, then we would do a, quote, car clinic, and we may have a drive test to evaluate the truck. Or if it's a new retail store concept, we may create a 3D model and take people on a shopping trip through this 3D store. But in some way, we need to test the product represented by the concept to make sure that it is as good as we think it is. And then as the final step, the scores from the concept test, the scores from the product test can be input into volumetric forecasting models. And with that, with the addition of marketing inputs, like advertising spending and promotional spending and expected distribution levels, pricing information, number of products in the category, we can forecast year one sales, and we can also forecast year two sales for the new product. Year two forecast not as accurate as year one, of course, because by that time you're beginning to get market reaction or competitive reactions. But amazingly, we can predict year one sales volume for almost any type of new product within very narrow tolerance ranges. And there's a long history of this, and the accuracy is quite high. So thank you very much for attending today's webinar. That concludes our presentation. We have had several questions come in. Clay, one of the questions is, why can't you just use crowdsourcing for new product ideas?
Well, I don't think it's just that you just use crowdsourcing. I think crowdsourcing can be an option that can help you fill out the picture. But crowdsourcing, I think, is really good for ideas. I mean, it generates some ideas, but as we were talking about it, it's not really a full-fledged product concept, if you will. I think crowdsourcing, and again, people are very good at kind of reacting to what they like, what they don't like. But the normal consumer is not really great at giving you revolutionary or out-of-the-box thinking. They're more often tweaking something that's there than kind of giving you something completely new. I do think there are some great examples of crowdsourcing for new product ideas. I think a lot of times, though, Jerry, those are actually part of a marketing strategy as much as a new product or more than a new product development process.
Yeah, I think one of the limitations of crowdsourcing is the simple fact that only 2 to 4% of the population is very creative in terms of new product development. So you've got a lot of trash mixed in with the creative ideas, so it can make it difficult to mine out the really good ideas. Another question that has come in is, when an ideation session is conducted, who owns all of these ideas? Does the company doing the ideation own the ideas, or does the client own the ideas? What are the intellectual property implications?
Yeah, and I think kind of getting back again to this idea versus concept, Jerry, and jump in here too, but I think one of the things that I feel is that these ideas are really kind of, they're not owned by anybody. You have an idea and it's out there, and a lot of people can come up with the same ideas. I think when companies start to develop a product concept and putting these ideas together and kind of working them down, then those product concepts and those concepts are really kind of the property, if you will, of our clients or the company. But just an idea of things that come out in a brainstorming session, those little snippets and ideas typically aren't owned by anyone, if you will.
So if you went to patent an idea, the patent office would laugh at you and say you can't patent an idea. But if you took that idea or combined multiple ideas and built a product, then you could own that idea you could patent it.
Yep, great way to say it. Way to say it. We have one more question that looks like came in. Jerry, question is really, why are some companies good at new product development and others bad? What's going on there?
That's a really interesting question, Clay. Of course, over the years, we've worked with hundreds of companies on new product development. And some companies are able to just create new product after new product. And other companies never develop any new products, or almost never develop any new products. But it's really rooted in the culture of the company. If the senior management of the company are really committed to new product development and will support it emotionally, means nobody loses their job if their new product fails. So senior management has to be supportive. They have to provide the investment money. New products cost a lot of money. Now, if you hit with a great new product, it can, double your whole company's sales. So there's a huge prize, but it takes so much management commitment and management support and creating a culture of forgiveness and tolerance so that people can be creative and they're not going to be punished if they end up with a failure.
Yeah. Next question actually goes really well along with that. What's the best way for a company to develop new product ideas internally?
Well, I think, Clay, I'm going to bounce this question back to you with, I know your team does the applied creativity process training to help companies develop products internally. So how does that typically work? I mean, if I'm a company and I ask you to come in and help us, help train us how to develop new product ideas, what would happen?
Well, and I think the first step is actually back what you said a minute ago. You got to let failure be part of the process and accepted culturally to really have any success at all. But when we come into a company, what we really try to do, there's a couple of different ways that we interact. One is that we go in kind of with a training and kind of teach them how to be creative and to explore new ideas. Everybody always says, okay, there's no bad ideas and you can't complain about ideas and that kind of thing, and no wrong answers, if you will. And I think that's part of it, but that's just a small part of how this ideation and brainstorming and creative process works. I think it's important when you do something internally that you bring in players from all across the company, not just a marketing group or a sales group, but you include operations, you include every kind of group, new product development group, any group that's relevant, and to bring in a wide group of people from each of those areas too. So that, whether young, old, male, female, whatever, different life experiences really help to, give you a wider net, as we talked about earlier. The other thing I think that we found when we do a lot of client development work internally is that they enjoy having us moderate. And I think the reason is it helps to, how do I say this? A lot of times I think people feel that if somebody internally is moderating or facilitating a session, they're trying to push an agenda. Whereas with a moderator, there's a less a feeling that an agenda is being pushed. And so people are a little bit more open. The one thing I would add in that is when you do an ideation session or a new product development session internally, you got to make sure that you're aware of reporting structures. people just want to make sure, when you do breakouts and things, you got to make sure that you understand who is reporting to who internally, because it could make a difference in in how open they want to be in that process.
Thank you, Clay, and thank you very much for attending our webinar today. And we hope that you've just found an idea or two in here that can help you and your company develop new products. Thank you.
Thank you, Clay and Jerry, and thank you everyone for attending today's Insider Series webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Jerry and Clay. Our next Insider Series webinar will be Wednesday, October 11th. Decision Analyst Felicia Rogers and Ken Clark will present on design thinking. We hope you enjoyed today's session and are looking forward to seeing you for next month's webinar, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much.